stop sharing my screen. Russell, over to you.
Kia ora everyone. I thought I would start off with a traditional karakia. It has relevance to our kaupapa today. Kia noi tātou. Whakataka te hou ki te uru. Whakataka te hou ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā tara tara ki tai. E hi aka ana te atakura he tio. E huka. He hou hunga. Humie. Huie. Tai kie. That traditional karakia talks about the strong bonds that hold us to our ancestors. And it also, I thought, is relevant today because it speaks about the change. So there are strong forces that bind us to our ancestors, but there are also the loosening of some of those bonds, as you can see through the karakia, that brings about change. So one is about being prepared, and the next half is about change. So I would like to just say, Te Reo Māori ore, ki te waiau, ki te au marama, mihi mai, mihi mai, mihi mai nā rangatira. Kia mātou kautai mai nei I runga I te kaupapa o te rānei. E hona rei tēnei kautai mai mātou ki Wanganui koutou. Nō reira, mihi mai, mihi mai, mihi mai nā rangatira. So what I've just said was, thank you to TESOLANZ for inviting me here today to be a part of our kaupapa and our discussion. It's an honor for me to be here amongst you all. And I thought I would just share a bit about my journey, and I thought I'd do a bit of the use of technology. So I'm hoping you can all see that. So I would normally start by saying, ko mangarei te maunga. So what you're looking at here is the maunga, which is to the west of where I live. Ko waiotaki te awa. So when you look in the distance here, you'll see the awa that comes in from Waitemata. And over in the distance is Rangitoto. And if you look really close, and I'll try and zoom in, you can see the palms that line the road that I live in, which is Dunkirk Road. And the thing about Dunkirk Road, I'm sure you'll recognize, is that it's named after places in Africa. And that is because this community was built for returning servicemen and women after World War II. And so that's how a lot of the street names, Martin, you'll see that too, is that they have names of places or battles in Africa, like Tripoli Road as another example. And if I scroll more towards the east, Tāmaki College is right about here. I'm hoping you can see that, but that's where Tāmaki College is. So literally, I live between the mountain and the awa. However, my waka was 757. It was an aeroplane, whereas the waka for this community is Tainui. And my ancestry goes all the way back to the Anglo or the Zulu Boer Wars, or with the British Wars way back. And ko Shaka Zulu Toku Tupuna, he'd be one of our ancestors going way back. And I've got Zulu and Scottish ancestry. And that is because my great-great-grandfather was a tradesman, a great white hunter, and he connected with the Zulu chiefs to help him or them understand all these waka that were arriving in Port Natal at the time. And the Zulu name for that area is Tequini. Yeah, so, you know, no Africa ki te tonga aho. Africa ki te tonga is South Africa. Quite often when I say that to my students, they say, oh, you're from Tonga, sir. I said, well, actually, the word Tonga in Māori is South. So that's where I'm from. And I just want to also say greetings again to everybody here. Kia orana, nisabula, talofa lava, malola lei, whakawheloaki, whakalofa atu, namaste, salam alaikum, ni hao, rahiritanga, and welcome everybody. So that's just a bit about me. And I thought I'd use technology to share that so that people have an idea of the place and our community that we serve. The title for my presentation today is part of our kaupapa year in our kauiako, which is Manai Kalani. And some of you may have heard of Manai Kalani. And I thought I'd put see, think, wonder. So as I go through my presentation this morning, I'm hoping that you will have an opportunity to think about what I'm sharing and to wonder how that might fit into your community, because I'm also mindful that communities are all different, and sometimes a fix in one community might not work in another. But I'm hoping to answer some of the questions that I've seen on the sheet there around equity issues that exist. We live in one of the poorest communities in New Zealand. It's a 1A. If you use the old decile system, it's 1A. It's the absolute lowest, going all the way up to decile 10, which are more wealthy communities. The equity index is another way of, it's been rebranded, so they name it differently. And if you've got a high equity index, it means you have the most need. Average income in our community is 19,000 per annum. Over the hill in St. Heliers and Glendowie, the average income there is 50,000 per annum. So it just gives you a bit of a context of some of the challenges and equity issues that we have. Looking at some of the questions, I know I'm hoping that there'll be others more qualified in this audience who will be able to address some of those, but I'll do my best. And please keep asking those questions in the chat. Thank you, Martin, for laying the rules of engagement. That is normal practice now after the lockdowns, is how do we engage in the online platform. I thought I'd put my special shirt on today, and if I take a step back, it's got J.I. Just Imagine. So I want you to continue to use that imagination. This comes from the alchemy of creativity and innovation. So they've taken all the elements, or as many as they could, off the periodic table, and they've put some of these words next to the elements. So for creativity, it's chromium, Cr. So there we go. I thought as a start, I would, now let's see if Prezi plays nicely. I thought a family portrait might be the way to go to start us off. So there's a picture of the family, the community we share, pretty diverse community, and it continues to change as we go along. And the makeup of the community is mostly Pacifica, and you can see the breakdown there. The second largest group in our school is Māori at 145 students. And then we've got Cook Island Māori as well included in there. And then, of course, we've got a growing number of refugees coming into our community, and also a growing Filipino community as they come in to support the regeneration of our community. I will add that our community has undergone regeneration. You might have read about it in the media, where they are now intensifying the community. So when you have quarter-acre sections, you now have 10 homes sitting on those. So that's just to meet the housing needs of our community, and of course of in general. The thing about our homes, they were cold, damp homes, and the students struggled with their learning because of their health issues. Kids struggle to learn if they can't breathe properly because of asthma, skin conditions, etc. And I can go on. So to move on is to talk about some of the things that we had to do when we started. And I'll talk about the timeline shortly. So what would we need in our kite to get this going? So there you can see there's some acronyms in there. One of the members of the Manaika Trust Board uses this phrase: limited choice, expanded opportunities. And that's how it's been for the last 10 years since we started. So GAF over there is Google Apps for Education. We've done a lot of staff PLD and continue to do so as staff come and go. The hackers group, it's not a negative group there. These are individuals who volunteer their time for a bit of pizza and a beer once a month on a Tuesday evening. We get together and we look at the challenges that technology is presenting. Teachers are asked to use a particular tool, and what they do is try and make sure that that tool works well for that particular individual. Then there was parent engagement. A huge amount of effort went into that. Because this technology was new in 2010, 2011, we had to bring our parents along. Staff PLD, there was a question about how do we ensure that staff are on board. We had teacher-only days where we were totally dedicating the time to this kaupapa of using technology in the classroom. And so I always believe as a leader, if you want to make the main thing, then you must make time for it. And that's what we did. Over 2010, 2011, we invested a huge number of time to get our staff ready, to get our students ready, and to get our parents ready. So that pedagogy change there was quite important. In the operating system, another Zulu word, Ubuntu, which is free, and it's about sharing. And we used Ubuntu to run our first devices we got, which were imported from China. And they were imported without an operating system. We said they were shipped in nude. And we put Ubuntu onto it, an operating system, to get them going. So we didn't use Windows or anything like that because it would have costed us money. And if I'm allowed to drop an F-bomb in this session, Martin, it's a 4-letter word and it's free. So we started there because we had very little money back then. We relied a lot on philanthropy, and that's why we formed the trust. And we also had a payment plan. So it wasn't just a handout to the students and the whānau. It was also an opportunity for them to put some putia into the game, however little that was. So we had a payment plan. Oops, it looks like Ruiha is speaking. I need to find it quickly. Give me a second. There we go. So the parents came in and they were paying $3.50 a week. And it was a small amount. But having said that, you must remember, if you've got a family of 4 or 5 kids of school-going age, you can multiply that by that amount. So you can imagine then they were paying a lot more to engage with this kaupapa around devices. We made sure everybody got the same device. Limited choice, expanded opportunity. Some schools go with BYOD, and some people say the acronym is for bring your own death, because it's difficult to manage when the kid's got an Apple machine, they've got a Windows machine, an Android machine, an iPad, and there you are as a teacher, you've prepared this wonderful lesson, and only 2 or 3 devices in the classroom can connect with it. So what we did was said, right, limit the choice. We're going with this one platform, and we went with Google Apps for Education. It didn't cost us anything at the time. And so that's what we put into the package, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And I'm going to go here quickly. And that's when it all started. So that's what we had to put in place. This is the strategy and the framework. So one, build teacher capacity. And that's how we went about it. Teacher only days, digital fluency intensives once a week for new teachers. And so we progressed, and that continues to this day. We targeted a particular class. So we had a pilot class, 2 classes, and we worked with 12 teachers within those 2 classes. And then they became our champions, and they supported the teacher only days to say, this is what we're finding. And of course, everybody came in to support that kaupapa. School infrastructure. Back then, you won't believe it, we ran the entire school on a copper connection, and it worked really well. And then fiber came along later on, much later on. We were well into it by then, but we managed with our copper connection. And then, of course, how do we create Google accounts? How do we manage setting those accounts up? How do teachers see all of that? And then, of course, the students' capacity. We had to identify issues around security for our students. So we came up with a cyber smart lesson and curriculum that was taught to the students from early on as how to be smart online, what are you sharing online, etc. Don't know if they all followed that, but we did put that in place to ensure that we had taken care of that part. Community again, we got the parents involved, and I'll show you a little video shortly from one of our providers who worked with the parents in the community. And then, of course, we started to train some of the young people to help with managing of those devices. So they were taught how to load the software onto the devices. This was well before the time of Chromebooks, remember? So we had these cheap devices that we brought in from China, and the students were able to help manage the fleet. The repairs, we had an excess stock of devices brought in alongside the main order, and we just scavenged parts of those or replaced broken devices. Within the $3.50, you got your device, you got a warranty, and you got insurance as well. And that was just to make sure that there wasn't an increased burden on family budgets, etc. And then, of course, the big thing was being able to put wireless into homes. Huge challenge, because we wanted our students to be able to take their learning home and continue learning. We call it extended learning opportunities. And so we went about connecting with companies to ensure that we could put access points on light poles. So Vector came along and said, yep, we're willing to help with that. We then also put devices into homes, so into state homes. And so we got some parents to agree to putting devices into their homes, and then they would broadcast to the neighborhood from those homes, and we'd pay for the internet connection, or Manai Kalani would. And then TRC decided to regenerate the homes, rebuild. And so as homes were being demolished and removed, a lot of our technology went with them. So the light pole option became the main push, and we could only achieve that with philanthropic support and some crown funding as well. Te Puna Kokere was involved in that as well. So I guess when you're trying to establish this is to find out where or which organizations could support you. And if you've got a whole community approach, whole of community approach, you find that you'll get more traction. And I guess it's just how you pitch that to them. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to play you a video quickly from our Whanau Engagement. Let me know if the audio works well there, Martin, or if it's to be loud.
So we have 4 modules as part of the whānau program. The first one we have is called the beginners module, and that's for whānau who have never really touched any sort of technology before. Phones they're not confident with, and also laptops. And so I take it back to basics for them, teaching them how to turn it on, how do you type, what the space bar is, all those sort of basics that they need to know before they can go on to module 1, which is the next module. And across the schools, this is usually a must-do module. So this module covers a lot of the co-op care and cyber smart curriculum. And this is really important because we want to make sure that our families are prepared for the device to come home, and they should know the basics, like where the device will be used, what they're looking for when the children are using it at home, how long to let their children use it for, all these sort of questions that we might not think to ask if we don't know. So we cover all those things in module 1, and then in the last 2 modules we cover more Google Apps for education. We sort of speak basic things over that with our parents, and then the parent portal too. So they all relate. So, you know, understanding how to look at a classroom site, and then what that means when I look at the parent portal, and what that means when I look at their Google accounts and using Google Apps.
I was going to say, if you looked in the background while she was speaking, and I'll just probably move that back there a bit. Those devices in the background that you're seeing there, those were recycled devices. So those computers were obsolete, and we loaded the same software that were on those new machines we shipped in from China. We put it on these obsolete boxes, and when I say boxes, I'm talking about Windows machines that we use in the computer labs. So instead of throwing them away, we recycled them and brought them back in, and we got sponsored keyboards and mice. So in every classroom, we figured out, looking at the breakages as we tracked it, there would be about 1/5 of the fleet out of service at any point in time. And so we put 5 devices into every classroom, so that if a student had a broken device, their learning wasn't affected because they couldn't access the content on the Google platform. So that was one of the ways we tried to fill the gaps, I guess, as we waited for machines to be replaced or repaired. And then I'm wondering if it's one of the impacts of that from 2010, you can see that was our results at level 2. We went from 33.9% to students who achieved NSA level 2 in that year to 70%. So it was showing an impact. I will say that when we went from normal schooling into lockdown, we found that it didn't have an impact on our achievement. In fact, our achievement went up in that time. And it wasn't just about the learning recognition credits. It was the fact that students could continue to engage with their learning. So we just pivoted. The one thing we had to start to look at is how do we, what platform were we going to use? And Google Meet was the platform. And very quickly, we came up with a set of criteria similar to what you mentioned, Martin. How do we engage online? And we set that out, and we gave that all to staff. Moving on, I'm wondering if we should go to Ruiha and just hear how that staff PLD and support has helped our young people and staff get on board. Then we'll hear from some of the students, and then I'll crack on with a few other things that have happened since 2010, 2011. Just very quickly, I'll shoot to this part here, just to give you an idea of the timeline and what has happened. Oops, get back out there. So 2010, 2 trial classes, 600 devices. We went whole school. We came up with the learning management system, which is Hapara, and I'll happily share that with you all. That was our teacher dashboard. Quite often I say to principals when I present that I actually carry on my laptop the entire school's learning. Can you imagine that? I remember back in the day when I was in the classroom, I would collect all the books, put them in a crate, put them in my boot, and go home to mark. Now I can see everybody's learning, their whole school. So I could sit at a coffee shop and start to go through some of the students' work or give feedback. or collaborate.
Reflect everybody's learning.
Say again.
Sorry, Victoria, did you have a question?
Sorry, no, it's right.
That's all right. And then when we moved down to 2013, 2014, we started to look at moderation, how we can share that moderation online, how could we use some of the work that the students were doing for assessment. So for example, if they were doing building websites, etc., or creating online portfolios, could we support that or give them NCA credits for that as well? We started to run online exams well before NCA or NZQA started doing theirs. And we actually ran the first pilot at Tāmaki College just to test their platform. We also had a Manaikalani, that MITA you're looking at there, Manaikalani Innovative Teacher Award. So some teachers were given funding to trial different things within their classrooms, and they got ongoing support around that, time allowance and a bit of funding as well. And then in 2015, we started to look at all those things that make a difference in teaching. Universal Design for Learning, SAMR, then they continued with the Digital Teacher Academy, Technology Integration Matrix, that's TIM. We looked at some cross-curricular work. We're trialing a lot of that. We've moved on since to problem-based learning. We focused on Google Plus as a platform for students to collaborate, and I'll share some of that. And then we looked at the teacher sites, because we found that when the kid came to the classroom, where would they go first? And if you didn't have a plan or a purpose, then they would go everywhere. So we've asked all our teachers from the get-go to build a Google site, and I'll share, well, Ruiha is going to talk to that in a minute, is that they built these sites, they put their content on there so that students, when they access their learning, they went somewhere in the first instance, like the site, or to their own student dashboard, which is very similar to our learning management system under Hāpara. And then, of course, there's the NCA credits, and then solo there is observed learning outcomes. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with that kaupapa. I'm going to move to Ruiha, if that's okay. Yep. I think I'll just go straight to the site there. And here's Ruiha.
Tēnā koutou, ko Ruiha hau, and I am a Te Reo Māori teacher here at Tāmaki College. Ko waiahau no hea, so who am I and where am I from? I te taha o tōku whaia on my mother's side, ko maunga taniwha ko mōtatau ngā maunga taniwha e mōtatau are my mountains. Ko manga taiore ko tau mārere ngā awa, manga taiore and tau mārere are my rivers. And ko māmaru ko ngā tuki matawhaurua ngā waka, māmaru e ngā tuki matawhaurua are the canoes. Ko te pātū ko ngā tihine ngā hapu, te pātū e ngā tihine are the sub-tribes. Ko ngā tikahu ko ngā puhi ngā iwi, ngā tikahu e ngā puhi are the tribes on my mother's side. I te taha o tōku whaia, matua, on my father's side, ko whakarara te maunga, whakarara is the mountain, ko matauri te moana, matauri is the ocean, ko mātātua te waka, mātātua is the canoe, ko ngā tikura te hapu, ngā tikura is the sub-tribe, ko ngā puhi te iwi. Ngā puhi is also the iwi. I tipua i raro i ngā parirau o Ukrani, a te wera nōpera rao ko Matiki no Tipene. I was raised by my grandparents, Te Wera Nōpera and Matiki no Tipene. Engari, ko tīna nōpera rao ko Niki Epiha o Kumātua. However, my parents are Tina Noble or Nōpera and Niki Epiha. No reire e ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā kārangatanga maha kei wainga i a tātou tēnei rā, tēnā rā tātou katoa. I agree each and every one of you today who have come. Okay, so before I get into my website, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my journey to becoming a Te Reo Māori teacher. It all starts with my passion for my language, for Te Reo Māori, as well as my culture. So I wanted to start with my grandparents who raised me. On the left here are the grandparents that raised me, one of which has passed. So both of them was, grandfather was a fluent speaker of Te Reo Māori. He was also the one who built my classroom here. He built the whare nui, the whare kai. He built a lot of buildings in my school. He was also the co-matua here at Tāmaki College for 28 years, I believe. So for a long time, and I was raised in the school, so I'm quite deeply rooted here, and I have such a strong connection to the school. Anyway, so the language that was spoken at home was mainly English. It wasn't Te Reo Māori. However, my grandparents did have the foresight and aroha to send me to Māori immersion schools. They sent me to Kohanga Reo, they sent me to Kura Kaupapa Māori, and they also sent me to Wharekura. These are all Māori immersion schools. So Kohanga is a Māori immersion preschool, Kura Kaupapa is a Māori immersion primary school, and a Wharekura is a Māori immersion high school. I attended Puo Te Moana Nui Ākiwa, which is in my community in Glen Innes, up the road. I also attended the primary school version, Te Purakapapa Māori o Puo Te Moana Nui Ākiwa, but I was going between that school and the school in Whangarei, which is where my grandmother was still living, as my grandfather was working here in Auckland. And that school was called Te Kura Kaupapa Māori o Te Rāwhitiroa. Once I finished primary school intermediate, I went to Te Wharekura. The school was called Te Kura Māori o Ngā Tapuwai. That school is in Mangere, so it was a bit of a commute to get there every day. I lasted 2 years before I decided I'm just going to go across the road to Tāmaki College, mainstream school across the road. So, and it was the best move. It was very difficult at first to get used to the new way of learning within a mainstream environment, but I quickly adapted, as you will soon see how I did with lockdown, but that's coming up. Anyway, so I continued my learning in Te Reo Māori because I wanted to seek a higher level of Te Reo, because when I came into Tāmaki College, there was no teacher here who could advance my reo to a higher level at that time. So a lot of it was self-taught. I did manage to pass level 3 Te Reo Māori, but yeah, it wasn't at the level that I wanted. So I continued my education in Te Reo Māori by going to Auckland University and doing my Bachelor of Arts, majoring in Te Reo Māori and art history. I graduated from there, and from there I was still hungry for Te Reo Māori and more ways of learning it, because I felt I still didn't get a good grasp of it. So I went and enrolled myself into Te Wānanga o Aotearoa. And there was a program called Te Pinakitanga. Te Pinakitanga was known within Māori communities to produce good reo speakers. A lot of them you see as reporters of Māori television, you see as composers for Te Matatini groups, or Maimoa, some of them are the performers of Maimoa. So yeah, Te Pinakitanga was already quite well known at that time. And there was a higher level than Te Pinakitanga, which only an elite group would get into. It was by invite only. And that was called Te Pinakitanga. And yeah, so that was more of an elite level of learning. But yeah, that was my journey to learning Te Reo Māori, my Te Reo Māori journey. It still continues to this day. I am still enrolling myself into things and courses and wānanga to upskill myself. And I found going to Te Pinakitanga, it really taught me about grammar. So kohanga kura kaupapa wharekura, it was more about picking up the language through listening, speaking, because you weren't allowed to speak English in these schools. So it was more about making meaning when I was going to these schools. However, when I attended Te Pinakitanga, it was all about grammar. Okay, they really broke down grammar, and a lot of these grammatical structures we did not learn in kura kaupapa and kohanga and wharekura. Well, I didn't anyway, and so it was all quite new to me. And I've brought all of the learnings that I've taken from these, and I've brought them into my teaching class environment as well, to help my kids with their learning of Te Reo Māori. So yes, and now I'm just going to talk to you about my journey as becoming a teacher. Now, my grandmother, Matikino, she is a teacher. She's a kura kaupapa Māori teacher, a Māori immersion school teacher. And she went on to get her degree after raising myself and my brother. So she attained her degree quite later on in life. And then she went on to get her master's. So she was a big inspiration in terms of me not wanting to become a teacher at first. Because I would watch her sit up late at night making these resources. Oh, it just consumed her life. And I just thought, I don't want to be a teacher because it just looks too hard. But she was just one of those teachers that just worked her butt off day and night for her kids. Her passion was creating resources. And funny enough, that has become my passion too. Because as you know, resources are so hard to come by for language teachers. But that's a topic for another time. So my grandmother was a big inspiration in terms of the type of teacher that I am today. But that is not how I became a teacher, because she actually put me off being a teacher. So let's move on to how I actually decided to say, yeah, to teaching. So I decided to become a teacher. It was actually because of our principal. She gave me, I got a text on my phone one day and she said, can we meet up? And I said, oh, sure. I wondered what it was about, of course. We met up at a cafe and she asked me, how do you feel about becoming the Te Reo teacher for our school at Tāmaki? And like I said, I wasn't keen. I just knew that this was some next level job. So she gave me time to think. And at the time, I was working as a receptionist at Māori TV, and I did not want to stay a receptionist for the rest of my life. I felt I had more to give, and I have a passion for Te Reo Māori. So I thought, why not? I'll give this a crack. So I think it was 4 weeks later, I had to give 4 weeks notice. I came to Tāmaki College and the idea was that I was going to be enrolled, I was enrolled into a program called Ako Mata Tupu, Teach First NZ. I am currently still a student of Teach First NZ. So Teach First NZ is different to other university providers in that we stay as LAT teachers, while we study to get our degree. So we work while we get our degree. That's the difference. So Teach First, its point of difference also is that its primary aim is to fill the gaps in education for those underserved communities. So on their website, they talk about disrupting the inequities of in education for low socioeconomic areas, such as this one, Glenanis, for Tāmaki College, which is a Decile 1 school. So yeah, anyway, so I came in here as a LAT teacher, and not yet enrolled into Ako Mata Tupu because the enrollment was at the end of the year. Excuse me. So yes, 1.5 weeks after I come into the classroom, we hit lockdown. So there's a major lockdown, and then there's this massive hoorah about going online and doing digital learning. And I had not even learned how to teach in class, let alone how to teach online. So yes, I must say I struggled. I think all of us, we all struggled. This is a digital school, yes. Tāmaki College is known to be a digital school. It's part of the Whanau Engagement group of schools here. However, I was not a digital person at all. Other than having a phone, I was not a digitally competent person. So I went out there and I did a lot of upskilling. So I upskilled myself by going onto websites like Ako Panuku, which is a great resource for Māori teachers. On there were some webinars about how to create all these things like online learning resources and all that. But I also looked at other teachers' websites to see how they made them and what they were all about, because they were talking about websites, they were talking about creating calendars, creating workspaces. So I was just stressed out, like totally stressed out. So what did I do? I created a website and it was basic. It just was title, levels, and a little bit of work put on because I had no idea what I was doing. I hadn't even had any units to work with yet. So it was all just quite stressful. And what did I do? I ended up enrolling myself into a beginner Te Reo Māori course, but it was taught entirely online. And this course was run by a woman named Janae Thompson. Some of you might be or might not be familiar with her programs, but I did it and it blew my mind because she used so many digital tools and so many things that helped me be able to teach my classes going forward. Not only that, I also created, so I'm going to go through and show you guys my website now. Let's just exit this. And so here is my landing page. This is my landing page. It looked nothing like this, by the way. Like I said, it was just a blank page with a title and all of the year levels and some work. But when I created this page, after all of the learnings that I had gathered over that time, I wanted it to be appealing first and foremost. So appealing to my students and to the families that were going to be looking at it. I wanted it to be visible, like work to be visible. So are they shareable? Can the students open all the documents? I wanted it to be accessible. So it had to be accessible. And those were what framed my thinking when I made this. But not just those things. I wanted it to be engaging. And what did I mean by engaging? Just having some fun things on there for family and anyone to just have a tutu with. So I created this activity board, which has a tongue twister, riddles, pūrākau, which are legends, a comprehension activity. These are your kind of traditional tasks, not task-based, but they're tasks that people can work through and just have a tutu with on my page. And creating this board was hard work. So as you can see, I only made one. Anyway, moving on. I also wanted my page to be bilingual because my language of instruction is mainly in English. My whole philosophy in my classroom was to saturate my kids in Te Reo Māori, to saturate my room with Te Reo Māori words and how I would speak to them in Māori and then translate it into English. And I wanted my website to reflect that. So I have little links here that are in Te Reo Māori. So you've got NCA Tau Makatahi, Tau Tikau, Tau Iwa, which is year 9, year 10, Rāri Rā, Tau Pai Pai, which is your landing page, Te Reo Māori, Ki Te Kāre, Te Tāmaki. So yeah, and so forth. And also you have here my links, which the images are taken from Te Aho Arataki Marae, which is the curriculum book for us, for Te Reo Māori teachers in mainstream schools. We do not use Te Maraitanga, we use Te Aho Arataki Marae. I also have down here some other links that are useful for my students and for the families. So I have KMA links, class sites links, career pathway links, Education Perfect. My favorite one is the automatically add macrons to Māori documents. So this is helpful for my kids to help them identify where macrons need to go. And I also created a I Whare Pukapuka, which is a online or e-library, because there was that whole hype about Bitmojis and Google Slides and creating these amazing interactive Google Slides. So I was part of that. I was riding that wave, say, and I created this this e-puka, this e-library, because you can go and read some digital books. And there's other links. So we have kupu.maori.nz, and yeah, so just there for people to have a little bit of a te tiro to look at. What I wanted to take you through though is how I created my websites to be more accessible, visible, and let's go here. So when they click on the link, they go to Taumatatahi Ako A Ipurangi. So this is their Ako A Ipurangi is online learning, and this is where all their online learning is. So this is one of the units that they worked online that we did some work on. Here it is. This is their calendar, and right at the bottom of it is their workspace. So I created workspaces for each of these units, which was hard work. Okay, yes, it felt like a lot of double handling, because I had to create everything and then I had to transfer it all onto Workspace. But first I had to transfer all that information onto this website. So it did feel like a lot of double handling was happening, but it was necessary because these kids needed access and visibility of their work, and so did their families. And when I created these workspaces, I was already conscious of the fact that it could look really boring if you don't have any images. So I went and taught myself how to put these images on, and Manaia Kalani had some awesome toolkits where we learned how to do some cool stuff as well. So here I use the same image for anything that's like an assessment. So Aromatawai is an assessment, and so I'll just use the same image. And so here's the Google Meet image here, just to make it look appealing. Like I said, appeal was important for me. And then when I did the lessons, I did it lesson by lesson so that the kids can, so if they didn't come to the first lesson, I can tell them, okay, so you can just go to lesson 1 and work your way through that. So rewindability was an important kaupapa at that time as well. So as you can see, I've got the learning objectives here, the resources here, and then the hei mahi, or the tasks, and then exit ticket on the right here. The exit ticket is more like just a survey or feedback on how that lesson went for them. And I use icons as well that linked in with the language modes like kōrero, speak, listen, whakarongo, okay, mātakitaki, listen, read, pānui. If they'll know what type of activity or task it is by seeing what the icon is that's there. So this was a speaking activity, listening activity, writing activity. But more oftentimes, it was an integrated lesson, so they would all be happening at the same time. So I'll get them to listen, they have to write it. As you know, that's how dictation goes. So yeah, I use Quizlet a lot for them to learn words, Kahoot to make it fun, and a lot of class slides. So yeah, just going through, that was all pretty much the same. I would use the same icons throughout, the same color code, so they knew what was what. Yeah, so that's how I worked with those. I must say though, when I did do an evaluation or a little bit of a talanoa with them at the end of that unit, my students did say that it got boring doing all those lessons online after a while. So when I felt like that, they were hoha, so I'll go to your workspace. I'm like, oh, workspace again. So what I did, let me just turn my screen around, it's getting a bit bright. So what I did is what I found is that when I spoke to my students, they told me, fire, man, I don't want to do my work online anymore. I want to do some work. I like writing in a book. So we went back, once we went back into the classrooms, I used not only Workspace in my website, I also brought back in my books. I had to mix it up because you can't to keep them engaged, you have to keep mixing it up with other things. So you can't, just like the saying goes, no one approach is the best approach. Sometimes you have to mix it in with other approaches. So yeah, so that's what happened with that. And so that's how I teach, using my workspaces, and that's how I use my website. It's mainly just so that the parents can go in and see what their kids are doing and where they're at. But during lockdown, this was my go-to. I got them to go to their Google calendar and to check what was on that day. But also to go, when they would come on to a lesson with me, we would work through the workspace together. And what I found difficult though, when we went online, is that a lot of the kids would turn off their screens. They'll turn off they'll turn off their screens and they'll turn off their mic, and you can't go through the screen and push that button and make it turn on again. So to me, the learning curve for that, the learning that came out of that experience of lockdown was that motivation and engagement was so important. But at the same time, if there's no attendance, you can't, engagement it's just not important anymore because there's no one attending. So the big issue for me at that time was attendance. Like, kids weren't attending the classes here. And it became very difficult because I was putting myself out to make all these amazing online resources, and they weren't coming to the table. They weren't eating the food that I was making, so to speak. So yeah, those are the experiences that I had from lockdown, and that's how I taught using my website, and that's how I teach using my workspaces. So at the moment, I only use my workspace as a place for them to go and find their work. If they need to look at the details of what they're doing. But most of the things I do is in the classroom at the moment is a lot of interactive stuff, because my students told me that they prefer to learn face-to-face. And those are what I have learned so far. So I do only have a small amount of time left. So I'm just going to cut it off there. But do get in contact with me if you have any questions about what I've just spoken about. So yeah, that is not my email address, by the way. It is epiha@tamaki.ac.nz. And this is my school website for those that want to check it out. So I'm going to end it there, and I hope you guys all have an amazing day today. Nō reira, ka kite e kia pai tōra.
Kia ora. Russell, sorry to interrupt. I think we have, it is a small group of people here. I don't know how other people feel, but I was wondering if it's possible to share that link to Ruiha's website. She just put it at the end there, that Google Doc. Yeah. And I don't know if other people, I don't want to preempt things, but I know, would other people like to look at that website a little bit and ask some questions about it? Yes, I suppose somebody wants the Google site link in the chat. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, Martin, yes, if they can look later, the attendees can look later, and then if they attend a later deep dive, yes, bring that to that discussion. That's a great. Yeah, Russell might be able to pick up on some other points that are more generic, more general. Great. And I think everybody you can see in chat, I'm speaking on behalf of Russell here and Ruiha, but we talked about it yesterday, that in that deep dive, they're happy to respond to some of those tools and apps that are being used to create such a vibrant platform. Yeah. Fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Thank you.
I was wondering, I know we an hour now. Do people need a little stretch or top of their water?
Good idea.
And perhaps when we come back, I enjoyed using Ruiha's site as well, because it helped me improve my Reo. And there's this tongue twister tool that she uses there, which I thought was pretty cool. And I may want to start off the next part of our session or half of it with that tool, maybe with your permission.
Brilliant. That sounds fantastic. Okay, so
And
we'll just take a short 5-minute break, max, and we'll come back then. I'll pause the recording now.
Digital pedagogy, but also for their own learning journey of English.
You know, being passionate about the use of technology as I am, I've always gone there first. So, and the tools have evolved quite a bit from 2010, 2011. So Yanni, for example, when our Egyptian ladies came to school, they were struggling to explain their challenges. And so we went to Google Translate. Now that tool's come a long way from when we first started using it. And so we could make some headway around that. The tool is such that if I pointed it at this website, it would translate everything for me. And it does a pretty good job of doing that. Again, it's about the equity. How many people would have access to a smartphone that can do that, or other devices that are used to do translations. So I found that when I was communicating with one of our students, I would use Google Translate. She'd type in the phone, it would translate. I'll get an idea of what she's asking, and I'll do my best to communicate a response to her using the tool. And so we were able to have that conversation. Of course, there are devices that can do the same thing as well. But again, you know, they cost a lot of money. And I'm always looking at the F word. Where's the free resources? And the closest I got to that is Google Translate, which we can use on a device, a Chromebook, which we supply the students as well. You can copy an entire page and put it into that, and it'll translate it for you.
So you think that that is that's a way of helping learners who have limited English to engage with the websites?
Yeah, and then the next part of it then is to support them. So we're fortunate to have Dr. Yani to work with the FEL students. So she starts off working with them to build up their competency. We also have Al's classroom where they go and spend time developing their language skills and ability before they go back into mainstream classes. Some students are able to cope with some of the classes which aren't language rich, and so they will go to those classes and work with the teachers using some translation tools or working at their own pace. And that's the other power of these sites, is that if they're well designed, is that students can work at their own pace. So we're not all working, you know, at the same speed or able to learn at that speed. So using the workspace that Ruiha has shown us is that it's all self-paced and paced.
One of the things that might be of interest, and it might mirror what you're already doing, people who are here, is in my work with the new learners of English, and there are a lot of refugee boys from Afghanistan and then Egyptian migrants, new migrants, is that I use Workspace and the digital platforms that we have available, and I'm not nearly as fluent as many other people in the school, but whatever we've done today, I capture, whether it's by, you know, taking images of what we've got on the whiteboard. I usually make the language of hearing the language and the fluency of the language that we've used today rewindable for the students. So I'll often be recording from while we're in the classroom, so they know it's going to be up on the site or accessible through Workspace tonight, or I'll do it in the evening, and it never takes me very long. And the students find that very good, because while they can self-drive, because we've been through it during the day, they need a lot of recycling of how do those word groups, how are they expressed fluently, and to get that fluency support for reading as well.
I see your chat there, Victoria. Tautoko that, because I know when I was helping a student who speaks Arabic, she got frustrated with the translator because it wasn't quite articulating her point. So you're right there that it's got a long way to go. I've got Ruiha's site up, and I thought I'd go to one of the tools that she's put in there. And so here's a tongue twister, and what it does is, and I hope it's going to play.
Ehi koiahare ki te hiwi teitei ki reira huraina ai te hāngi hūnene kei horo I te hauhu geri geri.
Does everybody want to repeat?
Hey, good point there, Martin. It's all rewindable.
Koko kutu kai tā o te motu, ka peke, ka kake, ka hotu, ka kimi kai ki ngā upoko kiko kiko o ngā kui kui kata kata.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
tongue
completely
twisters.
rewindable, and I can bounce between it as often as I
Ko
want.
kiri koko te kutu kai tā o te motu, ka peke, ka kake, ka hotu, ka kimi kai ki ngā upoko kiko kiko o ngā kui kui kata kata.
So there we go.
Is that on Google Slides?
I'm not sure how she actually developed that, but I'd imagine the tool that she used has all the functions built into it.
Maybe that, yeah, I can ask that at a dive deep, more deep.
I think it is Google Slides, Martin. Just embed the audio
Files.
So I think we've covered about 10 minutes, Russell. So you feel free to choose what you think you would be passionate to share in the last 10 minutes.
Okay, so just some of the stuff that's happening at the moment. Soul Machines, like I mentioned before we went to the break, this is what they've developed.
Hi, I'm Will. I work at Vector helping young people learn about renewable energy. Here's what happened when I met some students for the first time. I can help you become an energy expert. What should we start with?
Geothermal genius.
Magma from the Earth's core comes closer to the surface and we end up with volcanoes, hot springs and geysers. But do you know what magma is?
Molten rock from the outer core.
Absolutely right.
I thought Will was really fantastic. Like he's there looking at us. Like it's like a real human.
Here's a quick question for you. What do you think is the windiest city in the world?
Wellington.
Nice. If the sun is so far away, how long do you think it takes sunlight to reach us?
10 minutes.
Correct. You're a solar superstar. I was curious if they liked me.
It's different from talking to Will than talking to Siri, for example, because he's there, you can see him.
He was quite human-like, even though he's an AI.
Then the human version of me arrived.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. We got some really good reactions out of a few kids.
Is that?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. A couple of them didn't recognize me straight away. You know, it's me, eh?
Oh, yeah. True, I can see that
It's a
now.
bit of a shock seeing my digital avatar for the first time. It's like looking in the mirror, I guess.
Let's face it, he may look like me, but I'm the one who knows about energy.
Yeah, I think Will could be used as an education tool in many areas.
We did learn some things that we didn't know.
Wellington is the windiest city. I learned that you wouldn't notice if the sun went away for 10 minutes.
It's not just a blank screen they're staring at, answering questions, so they feel like they're actually interacting with a human.
He was a good teacher.
It was great meeting the thinkers of tomorrow because together we can shape our energy future.
Good one, Russell.
Yeah, so now here's the thing though, our jobs are not in jeopardy. Because when we spoke to the students, they said, yeah, it's all good, but we still want our teachers, and Rui has alluded to that. When they get tired of this online thing, they want that human interaction. So these are just tools that will help fill that gap when we need it to, when we can't be there in person. We find that for our relief work, teachers are directing the relievers to the workspaces. I know for a fact that I had a teacher leave and I filled in for that teacher. Because the workspace was there, I could keep the students going. And I learned a lot in that. And, it was a digital technologies class, but I could help them move along with their learning and track their learning. So there's a lot of exemplars or examples of that. I thought I could very quickly, how much time I've got now, Martin? It's 11:52.
Yeah, lots of time, yeah.
Yep. And then we'll go to a Q&A and see what else let's hear from some students quickly, and then we'll move on.
Hey guys, Phil here from Tāmaki College. At the moment, I am a level 1 student at Tāmaki College. Since we've already started, I'll just take you through a little example of what I do. At the moment, I'm working on my design developments, and we develop some stuff like these type of designs. After we design them and develop them, we upload them to Google+. What is Google+? Well, Google+ is just like Facebook, but we use them for our educational use of communication. I'll just show you a few design developments made by students in our class. So, for instance, one of my classmates, Vincent, he uploads his design development, and this is one. Looks pretty legit. And I'll just read you guys some comments. Yes, we can comment on our peers' work. We get lots of comments that applies to our work, and those comments would help us improve what we've done. After we get these images up on our Google+ site, we load them to our sites. Yes, we have sites, and those sites can be found over here. My sites in Tāmaki College. And when I'm on the architect, this is where I always upload my stuff. See, this is one of my design developments. I just embed it here, but I hope that you have enjoyed my video. This is what we do in our graphics class most days of the week. And also, we have fun. Just don't tell our teacher.
And Few has come back to teach at Tāmaki College. I actually have another video of Few where he came from a school that wasn't part of our cluster, and he speaks about how he very quickly was able to pick that up. This was 2014, I might add. That was 3 years into the shift to digital pedagogy. Here's some teachers from way back then. Some are familiar to you, Yanni, and some are not.
Google Sites. That was fun. Lots to learn making those. Dashboard is good. Children like Dashboard. I like Dashboard. And we like making Google Sites, Google Books. Teacher Dashboard was really useful this year because it meant that I could give really quick feedback to students, and then we could have sort of ongoing conversations about their work. And we wouldn't have to have the problem that we often have in English where students are hesitant to redraft because they could quite clearly see it was an ongoing process, and that was less of a problem. Whereas, I work with on paper, it was often, they'd spend time writing something, you give it back with comments and they wouldn't want to redo it because they felt like they'd already finished it. So Google, with working on this through the sites and the dashboards, I found that improved quite a bit.
How has it been creating your own Google site this year?
Bit scary at first because I didn't really know what to put on there. And once I got started, fun.
How has it been working on Google Docs with the students instead of in the books?
Super simple. I love the teacher dashboard because I can see exactly what students are doing and I can give them instant feedback.
Netbooks this year have been a really good thing for me and my students. DJ is working on his work and he's working on something that would normally take a student without a netbook a month to do, but he's managed to do his visual text through a Google site, which has taken him 2 days to do. So the amount of work we get done is good and the quality of the work is good because of the netbook, so I'm happy.
I found it really exciting because I was able to use my own creative juices and make it personal to me. And also when I'm creating, I'm just thinking about what the kids want to see. So it's also personal for them as well. So I really enjoyed it.
How about the Google Docs? How is it sharing work that way with the kids?
I think it's brought a whole new kind of dimension to learning and teaching. I think that a lot of kids don't necessarily work all the time in the classroom. So a lot of them find, you know, working at night a lot better. And so I get kids sharing work with me in the middle of the night, early morning. So, you know, and sometimes it helps them to think a lot better and clearer when they're not in the classroom with a whole lot of kids. So they get that access wherever they are, and so do I.
Has the use of the teacher dashboard helped in this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see where kids are at. The comments are really useful, and they're useful for me. I can also see that students are working and when they're working. So I can go back and check the revision history, see what times they're on. And I found that it's another tool for me in the classroom, so it's awesome.
How's it been using Google Sites this year? It's been really cool. It's been quite exciting because it's given us the opportunity to develop something from a blank canvas and to experiment with new ideas and new ways of learning.
Enjoyable creating our website, putting different videos, references and reading for classes that I teach.
I found it really good in terms of what I can provide for the students now. So what I mean by that is that because they're able to access a lot of the content and materials and exemplars from home, it means that whatever we're doing in the classroom can be reinforced at home. Because it essentially, I suppose, it's set up like a normal, what I call a normal site, and the tabs just link off the different areas. That's been really useful in terms of being able to put different types of information together. So, yeah. How have you found sharing Google Documents with the students? They've been really good. The students have been really good about it. I guess because it's been happening across all subjects that they're involved in, they're so used to doing it now that it's a really good way of sharing information. The information is saved. So there's not the issue of, oh, I can't find, well, they may have a I can't find, but it's just in terms of the file name. But it's not as though it can't be found because it's lost under the car or my auntie's house or whatever the case is. It just means that they need to make sure that they name their files appropriately. But it's been really useful.
Yeah, hi. It's been really good working on the Google Sites. I've used it to do my own resources for Te Reo Māori. We just videoed ourselves and then the students would use those as an example instead of us going to look for them on YouTube. Also the dashboard, a lot of the students' work is placed in the folder and I'm able to access it through there. I think we did an assessment through using the Google Docs and students are quite familiar with it and they put their work into the document, into the folders. So it's been really excellent using it for this first year that I've tried to do it and just putting it all together and with a lot of help from our ICT crowds. So it's been excellent.
Sorry, oh, go.
Yeah. So I think, yeah. One of the things is that a lot of PLD had to go in. This you must remember is the early years. As some of those teachers have moved on, they get snapped up pretty quickly. And so we've had to continue this PLD program, you know, as new teachers come in, because at Teachers College, they only get a short space of time to get all of that. So we do a lot of development, even when we get our pre-service teachers coming in. You heard a lot about this dashboard. If I may quickly just show you, you know, when I say to people, I've got the entire school's learning on my laptop, my iPad, my phone, that is it. You know, Google Classroom was actually developed from Hapara. Hapara was one of the first companies to develop this learning management system. So there you go. This is the entire school's learning. So if a parent comes in, I could say, okay, let's see how your kid's doing in any particular subject. So we have these learning conversations, or open to learning conversations, especially when there's not much work that has been put into their folders Or as with some young people, you'll find that they're not very tidy and they don't put all their documents into the folders that they're supposed to. So here you go, you can see there's a lot of them have populated some documents. I've asked it to show me 5. I could ask it to show me more than that. And if I go into sharing here, there are going to be probably lots of documents which are unshared as well, which means the student hasn't put them into their folder correctly. So that's all the unshared work that's sitting there. You can also go into all docs and look at everything that the student has created. And it's all here, you know, at a click of a button. And then I can get a quick view of the student's work by hovering over it. And I can see the student has been speech, what affects teenagers, and they were active on this document August the 10th at 12:28. And if teachers feedback on the documents, it'll also tell me, oh, am I not sharing my screen?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
You are.
Oh, can everybody see that or?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's fantastic, Russell. I was just wondering, does anybody, we might finish up soon enough, does anybody have any questions they want to ask Russell now? Feel free to unmute or turn on your camera.
I'd like to suggest, Martin, that there's probably so much that people would want, and they can rewind this, look at the recording again.
Yeah.
If we were to give a heads up for a next session, which is a deep dive on so much that probably people have got questions about, then there's a little processing time we can give them in order to be able to respond and get back to us in order to then shape the next deep dive session.
Fantastic. Yes. So what I was, yes, that's exactly a good point. So the recording of this session will be, I might stop recording now though, that's okay.